there's a couple of words in this big long prayer. They're the actual like, don't mess up these words or it doesn't count sort of words.
Yeah.
And once he prayed those words, like I knew to listen for them. And I just like just start like crying, and I'm like, I'm a priest. Like I couldn't believe it. And she said, hey, I'm interested in your RICA program, RCIA. And I'm like, okay. So I call her back and we start talking. I'm like, yeah, like, how'd you become interested in this? And she goes, well, it started on TikTok, of course. And I just about dropped the phone.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
it started on TikTok?
Welcome to the Exposing Catholics show, where we expose the lives, interactions, and stories of Catholics. Our guest today is Father David. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. So I wanted to start with, you're obviously a young priest and a new priest. You were ordained how long ago?
Like 8 months ago. It was
baby
May
priest.
20th of this past year. So still getting all the new stuff, which is exciting.
I wanted to start out with, I just recently became a lector and Eucharistic minister, and I find it very, specifically for the lectoring, was that I realized I didn't know exactly when all the parts of Mass happened. So I'm always nervous about missing my part. And do you, as a new priest, have something like that going on too?
Yeah, I think a little bit. Like, so especially early on, like everything is new. And so luckily in seminary, we get a little bit of training of like, we do our practice Mass and we run through it so that the first time that we're doing it for real, it's not a total mess. But there were a couple of points where it's like, you know, early on, it's like, wait a second, okay, it's the beginning of Mass and start with the sign of the cross, and then it's, do we go to the creed? No, it's not the creed yet. And it's like, I'm bouncing around in my head. After you do it a couple dozen times, it just becomes second nature. So yeah, it's really not too bad after a handful of practice.
What was the first Mass like?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
the whole ordination weekend was just the most overwhelming thing. It was just like, because it's this thing that like I imagined for like 9 years in seminary as I'm going through school and, you know, going to other friends' ordinations, and I'm like, okay, like that's going to be me someday. That's going to be me someday. And then all of a sudden, like it's that day. And like it was just so much. It was so overwhelming. All of my loved ones were there. Like everybody in the world that I love was there. And they were all there like to support me and to love on me and to celebrate what God was doing in my life. And yeah, like this was so cool. I had a priest friend from India that I met when I was in college doing a pilgrimage. And when we finished this pilgrimage, I said, Father Stanley, I'd love it if you could come for my ordination someday. And he said, I will be there.
Oh
I didn't know at the time. He had no way of fulfilling this promise. He told me he would be there. He didn't have money to come, and he didn't have a visa for the United States. But he just said, like, yeah, like if God wants this to happen, it's going to happen. And so he promised he would be there. And a few years later, by providence, he gets a visa. And then because he got that visa, his diocese started sending him to the United States to do like mission appeals, fundraising. And so they paid his way for him to come. And he was already going to be here like the week after my ordination. So he just said, hey, I'm going to fly in a week early. And he came for my ordination.
That's crazy.
So yeah, all of these loved ones were there to support me. And yeah, the first Mass was just like, it was so cool. Like so much love. I didn't realize that like that much love could exist in the world, let alone it all just be like aimed at me all at once. It was just crazy. It was so good.
What did it look like? Like, I don't even know what an ordination looks like. What's the prep for it, and like, how does the day go?
Oh, so the day is like, it's a little bit like, I think the closest comparison would be a wedding day, right? Like, it's this kind of big vocational ceremony. If you've never been, you got to go. It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's a big long Mass. It lasts like 3 hours, but I don't know. For me, it felt like it was 2 minutes and an eternity at the same time.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's starts off with pretty much a normal Mass. The only difference is it takes forever for everyone to walk in because like all the priests are there.
Oh, okay, got it.
So it's this big long procession, and then we're walking in, and yeah, it's beginning of Mass as usual, and then after the homily comes the actual ordination rite, and there's different parts of it that are really cool. We kind of we present ourselves to the bishop. We lay down on the cathedral floor, like face down on the marble, and all the angels and saints are praying for us. And then we get up, we kneel in front of the bishop. He places his hands on our heads. Then he prays the prayer of ordination, and like at that point, we're ordained. Like we are. Well, oh, I skipped a part. We make our promises.
Okay.
We promise obedience to the bishop and promise to essentially do what we can to be good priests. And then, the prayer of ordination, like we're ordained. And I'll never forget, like there's a couple of words in this big long prayer. They're the actual, like, don't mess up these words or it doesn't count sort of words.
Yeah.
And once he prayed those words, like I knew to listen for them. And I just like, I just start like crying, and I'm like, I'm a priest. Like I couldn't believe it. And we all stand up. We're kneeling in front of the bishop. We all stand up, and I like turn to my classmates, and we're like wiping tears from our eyes, just like laughing and smiling. We get vested, and then they anoint our hands with oil, with the chrism oil, you know, the really good smelling stuff they use at baptism. And afterward, this was a really special moment. We all, one by one, get our hands anointed, and we go back to the sacristy, kind of in the back of the church. And we're rubbing the oil in, and then kind of you take the excess and you wipe it off on a cloth. And then we kind of gather back there as we're waiting for the rest of us to get back there. And just one by one, we get back there, and we're just hugging, and we're smiling, and we're laughing, and we're crying together. There was no one else back there. It was just myself and my classmates, these guys who I've been journeying with, I mean, some of them for like 9 years. Yeah. As we've been taking classes together and on this long, beautiful journey. And it was just this profoundly like intimate moment of like celebrating that we had what God was doing in our lives.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. Why do you like lay on the ground completely? Yeah. Is there a reason for it? Obviously there's a reason, but I have no clue what it is. Yeah, it's a symbol. I mean, ordination is like we're laying our lives down for the church. Like we're dying. That in a very real way, like, I mean, the marble, it's cold. Like if you've ever laid down on like a stone floor, it's not warm. It's the tomb, right? Like you lie down in the tomb with Christ. And that way, when you get back up, you rise with him from the tomb. Wow, that's crazy. I never would have thought of it like that, but that's really beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Jeez. I don't have anything to say. It's crazy. Yeah, it's really cool. I highly recommend, if you can make it to ordination this year. So priesthood ordination, we have one guy for the Diocese of Cleveland. But for diaconate ordination, I think we have like 8 guys being ordained to the transitional diaconate. So the following year we'll have 8 guys ordained to the priesthood, which is really cool, really special. During all of your years at seminary, is there like a specific class that you took or like a moment that sticks out to you in all your 9 years? That's a crazy question. That's a good question. But like, man, I need to review 9 years of my life now. Give me a second. There were a lot of really good classes. We've got a really good seminary here in Cleveland, with a lot of good professors, good teachers, and they're like, they're good priests that are forming us for priesthood. Favorite class? Our class on the Eucharist was really good. We had the pleasure. I was actually the last class where we got to learn from now Bishop Woost. Got to take him for Eucharist, and that was just a really good course, diving into like, not just like, I think a lot of the time as Catholics we stop at like true presence, like, okay, Jesus is present in the Eucharist, like cool. But like in this course we went past that, not just like, okay, he's present, but like, what is he doing? What is this? What does it mean for Eucharist to be sacrifice? And what does it mean for, the priest to offer Eucharist and to pray the prayers of the Mass? And we went through all the different Eucharistic prayers and like what they mean and the differences and their origins. And it's one of the cool things about being Catholic is like there's always more. Like there's always more depth. Like you're never gonna, it makes me so happy to know I'm never gonna like finish the Catholic faith and be like, all right, I know it all. Like that's it, I'm done. Like I'm always gonna be a novice in this, which is so cool. Yeah, it goes so deep and there's always an answer. So that's, you're never gonna like, oh,
I guess I'll never know. Like, there's always an answer, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was one of the first things that like really attracted me to the faith when I was in high school. I remember going to Bible studies with my youth group, and I was that like kind of annoying kid who was just always asking questions, like so many questions, but like there were always answers. And it just got me so excited and so amped up.
Yeah.
That like, hey, I'm not going to stump them. Like, my intellect is not mighty enough to, tear down this ancient faith. That, oh no, like there are people way smarter than me that have already asked these questions and come up with pretty awesome answers.
Yeah, that's so cool. Which is what I love about the Catholic faith, for sure, because you ask so many questions.
I do ask a lot of questions, but just like you, they're always answered.
Yeah.
Catholic Answers is probably my most visited website.
Oh,
Just constantly checking it for different random things. We've got something special for all our Catholic organizations. Now, before you skip past this part, it's not an ad. It's more like an incredible opportunity to take your digital presence to the next level. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Something only for our podcast listeners. We, DM Productions, have a 2-day Catholic social media makeover course. It's an online course specifically made for Catholic organizations. It will take your social media to the next level. And we make it easier than ever with our step-by-step video walkthroughs, cheat sheets, customizable templates, and more. Catholic organizations, let's start creating the quality and results that secular businesses have, but with the depth and beauty of Catholicism. Oh, and did I mention the price? $700. But remember I said I was going to let you in on a little secret? Use code DMPodcast to get it completely free. No credit card required, just pop that code in and you're all set. Head over to www.dm.productions/social media makeover or click the link in the description. Now back to the show. But speaking of the seminary, we were talking with Father Eric and he said that, I don't think he even said this. It was when he was like walking us around, giving us a tour. And there's like it's like a practice. What did he call it?
Oh, it was like they do practice masses or something like that. A simulation or something.
Simulation. And I was like, what does that
Simulation chapel. I think that's what it was called. Yeah. It's like, what even is that?
What, it makes sense after like hearing about it, but what is that?
Yeah, so that's actually new at the seminary. They just did a huge like $20 million renovation at the seminary over the last like 2.5 years, 3 years.
Yeah, it looks so pretty in there.
It's really nice. I'm super excited about that. And of course it happens like right as I'm on the way out the door, right? Like, timing is just perfect like that. But yeah, one of the cool things they have, we jokingly call it the LARP lab. So liturgy and the art of ritual is one of the classes, LAR. And then the practicum, so LARP, the LARP lab, just because it makes our professor cringe. And so, yeah, it's a space it's a classroom, but has a few kind of recognizable elements of a chapel so that we can do our practices in there and go straight back to, okay, what went well? What do you want to improve for next time? What felt comfortable? What was difficult? And kind of give each other notes so that, hopefully we can learn to celebrate the liturgy well.
They were also saying like there was like a fake casket and like all these different like potential scenarios that could come up. Like, I don't know. There was one where like some mom comes in and she's really angry, or like, how do you respond to something like that? Yeah.
That's something that's like new even since I got there.
Oh, really?
The kind of scenario practices. And I think it's wise to have some sort of practice with it, but the funny thing is, and I've learned this pretty quickly as a priest, like, you can't actually prepare for all the stuff. Like, there's stuff that comes in our door that just like, man, I'm not, remotely qualified to be addressing this stuff. Like, I think it was, 2 or 3 months ago, I was over at the school just like talking with some of the kids and get a call from the secretary. Hey, we need you over here. I come over. There is a full 10-person family of Peruvian refugees on our doorstep, and they are asking for help with like all of their stuff. I'm like, let me see what I can do for you. And like, trying to get them clothes, trying to make sure they have a safe place to live, trying to walk them through like all of the stuff that they're going to need. And trying to do all of this in Spanish, which is my second language and I'm good enough but not great at. It was truly a moment of realizing like, man, this job of priesthood is a lot wider than I thought it would be. People coming in, I jokingly say in the office, we talk about like the cows got out. And it's this story that my friend told me about a priest in, I think Ukraine, who he like had this parish, and the Orthodox essentially stole his parish away from him, and like took his beautiful church. And now he's stuck in this like tiny little room to celebrate the divine liturgy. And his old parishioners, when their cows get out, they call him because they know that he'll go. Like at night, they'll call him middle of the night, hey, my cows got out. And he goes and he helps them get their cows back. Oh my God. Because like to be a priest is to be radically available to your people and to help them with whatever comes up to the best of our ability.
Wow. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Like, that's the one call. It's like, we need your help. I'm there. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what, day, what time, like middle of the night.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's so funny that like non-Catholics will call the priest, like people who are, they've never been to the Catholic Church. Maybe like, oh, our friend, their kids go to our school or something like that. And they said that you're nice and you give good advice or something like that. It's like, yeah, but like I'm a priest. I'm not like a therapist, or I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm not a lawyer, right? Like if people come to me with all sorts of questions, it's like, I'll do my best. I'll answer to the best of my ability and try to be humble enough to say like, well, this is not my area of expertise. You should probably consult with such and such a person, but here's my 2 cents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Could we talk about your call to priesthood and what that looked like? Like growing up, what did the family structure look, even before you were thinking about priesthood, like what did the family structure look like?
Yeah. I grew up in Hudson at St. Mary's Church, and have an older brother, a younger sister, and a younger brother. So older brother Matt is 2 years older than me. He's now in Salt Lake City doing tech sales out there, like selling some sort of software that I don't understand. Younger sister Katie is living in New York City. She works in the film industry doing post-production. And then younger brother Michael is a senior at Ohio State studying business. And so kind of 4 of us over the course of like 12 years, kind of evenly spread. And growing up, it was, church every Sunday. And at least for the first little while, it was kind of, you go to church because you're supposed to go to church because mom and dad want you to go to church. And then around the time when I was preparing for First Communion, Father Damien Ference, who's a priest, he's now the vicar for evangelization. He got assigned to our church as this like young, energetic, newly ordained guy. And I remember seeing him doing his job. And he was like, he still is this way, like so energetic and so, amped up and joyful doing his job. He just seemed so happy doing his job. And I looked at so many of the other adults in my life and they just seemed miserable doing their jobs. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll do what he's doing, right? Like he's having fun. I'm not these guys aren't having fun. I'll do what he's doing. So that kind of like planted the seed and got me thinking maybe someday I'll be a priest. And then it kind of lay fallow in the back of my mind for a long time. Until going into 8th grade, long story short, I met Jesus. It was at a Catholic camp that our parish puts on for the middle schoolers called Camp Celebrate. And I met Jesus in a very particular way, praying with a seminarian in adoration. And he helped me to know that God sees me, God loves me, and God has a plan for my life. And that very simple message just like blew my heart open. And I knew I wanted to just do whatever God asked me to do. So I got super involved in the youth group and started meeting a lot of the seminarians from my home parish. And I saw that they were joyful in pursuing God's will in their life. And it just kept, it was like always joy that drew me towards the priesthood. And it's cool to finally be a priest and to realize that there is so much joy to be found in this vocation.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a young age. Usually it's like, oh, I'll think about it later. Like usually it's like it's in high school and they just, no, I don't want to do that. But like from a young age, and then like that beautiful experience in 8th grade, and then just kind of keeping it in the back of your mind, but like always looking at it as like everybody that's doing this is so joyful. Like I want that,
Yeah. yeah, I think that for me that joy was just so key. And it's funny, like there are so many different paths to the priesthood that different guys take, and I'm sure you're learning about that as you interview different priests. Like there are a lot of different stories and lots of different paths, but there are some similarities in all of it. And I think here in Cleveland in particular, we just have a really good and healthy presbyterate, like lots of good priests that are filled with love and joy and a passion for what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Father Eric was saying that the best thing, or like one of the most influential things in getting people to the priesthood or calling them to the priesthood is seeing a happy, healthy, thriving priest.
Oh yeah.
Which like, it just makes so much sense because if they look frail and they're like very just like a grumpy old priest is like I don't know.
I don't want that. Yeah.
At my ordination, Bishop Malesic, he told a little joke. He said, you know, sometimes mothers, they'll approach me and they'll say, oh, my son, we need more priests, but not my son. My son, he's too handsome to be a priest. And
ouch.
He'll say,
Oh my gosh.
you know, sometimes another mother will approach me and say, oh, we need more priests, but not my son. He's far too intelligent to be a priest. And okay. And other mothers, they'll approach me and they'll say, well, we need more priests, but not my son. He's too hardworking to be a priest. And he said, well, apparently we want more priests, but we want them to be lazy, ugly, and dumb. Luckily here in Cleveland, I think we don't have that. We've got some good, healthy, young, energetic priests.
Definitely. Yeah. That's so funny.
He's a funny guy. I love Bishop Blessing so much. I'm so happy that he's our bishop. Just a good man.
What did your parents and your siblings think about?
Yeah, kind of a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, like families are family, right? Like, and I think our family, like we're about as diverse as they come. And so some of my siblings have kind of strayed away from their practice of the faith for different reasons, and that's more their story to tell than mine. But I think that even the siblings that have kind of strayed from their practice of the faith, they see that I'm doing what makes me happy. They see that I'm like pursuing what I'm really passionate about. And because of that, like they kind of could care less about, you know, am I a priest? But they love me and they want me to be happy, and they see that I'm doing what makes me happy. And so on that level, they're really excited. My parents were very supportive from the beginning. I think right off the bat, you know, when I told them I was going to enter seminary out of high school, they probably would have preferred if I had gone to college for a year, you know, kind of pursued. I was thinking maybe engineering or something like that, like give that a try, see if that works, and then maybe enter seminary. But yeah, in hindsight, like it was such a good move for me to just enter out of high school. It's where the Lord was calling me, and I'm so glad that when he came knocking, I was willing to answer the door.
Yeah.
He's never outdone in generosity. Like I've experienced that too many times to know it's true. He's just always going to return tenfold whatever we give to him.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've like experienced and learned throughout our like faith journey, and like for so many other people as well. Like you hear that.
I think the biggest thing is just the willingness to say yes.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to say yes, you like can feel a little tug or like a call, and then it's like, I could just say no and like keep doing my own thing. But the willingness to lean in and to keep saying yes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not easy.
Yeah, to just trust God blindly. Be like, you have my best interest. Like, it's going to be your way anyways. Like, might as well not resist it.
Yeah. Like, the thing is, like, we as Catholics, we don't believe in blind faith, right? Like, it's not just like, all right, like, just do it because you're supposed to do it. It's like, you know the person who you're trusting. Yeah. Right? Like,
yes.
You know that, like, you know, you're jumping into the pool, but dad's in the pool, he's going to catch you, right? Like, you know that the one that you're trusting is trustworthy. And like we learn that slowly over the course of our discipleship, right? Like in little things at first, and then like there, I think, comes a moment for all of us where we got to put our money where our mouth is and say like, okay, like, God, you've been faithful in these little things. Now I'm going to trust you in this big thing.
Yeah.
And say yes. And even if that yes is just a little bit bigger, right? Like when I entered seminary, it was not, I didn't sign my name in blood, right? Like that was not commitment to becoming a priest. But it was saying, God, I'm going to trust you with this year. I'm going to enter into seminary this year, and we're going to see where it goes. And if you keep calling me forward, then, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And then, after 9 years of that, like, it just, I mean, through some incredible things, the Lord just made his glory known and made me really confident, like, okay, this is where you're calling me.
Yeah.
And throughout seminary, I know she has seen you around it. Like, you were a seminarian and you're helping out with Life Teen or doing different retreats and conferences. What did those look like for you in terms of the graces and your journey and call and continuing towards the priesthood? Because like you were saying, you're just saying yes to that year, so it wasn't definite that you were going to.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest graces that came from like a continued participation in Life Teen was this fruit of spiritual fatherhood, of coming to realize that like a yes to priesthood is not a no to being a father.
That's really good. That's a really good line right there.
It's a yes to a different kind of fatherhood. That like to be a father is like, fatherhood is not defined by biological fatherhood. Like fatherhood is defined by the fatherhood of God, and biological fatherhood is one instantiation of that, and spiritual fatherhood is another. And in a sense, it's a more real instantiation of it. Like this is closer to the fatherhood of God than just, and I don't want to say like mere biological fatherhood, but there is a certain, like, priesthood is a higher calling in a sense. Spiritual fatherhood is, and it's something that I'm continuing to like be a student of, especially here in the parish. Like there are some young families where I feel, I feel like my fatherhood is just being like drawn out of me. These like incredible kids that I just love so much. And in such a strange way, like there are people older than me that I get to be a father to. Like there are people who are, sick in the nursing home that I get to be a father to. One of the coolest things is there will be people who will come into the confessional who have been away from the church, who haven't gone to confession for 30 years, for 40 years, for 50 years. I'm 28 years old. I feel like God put me on this earth to hear their confession, right? Like they've been straying away, and God's like, all right, we're going to get to work to get this one back.
Yeah.
Like it's something that is so big. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to learn what the spiritual fatherhood is. But in a really big way, it started ministering to teens and to young people, and just like walking with them, with a reverence and a love for their hearts.
Yeah, I remember being in Life Teen and having like just I don't even know, like my mom's friends and like just different people that were older than me, or like hearing like some of my peers' testimonies, and just like them like physically walking with me and just like talking with them and asking for their advice. And it makes a huge difference in your faith life when you're in high school, or when you're in middle school, whenever you're like in that sort of program, that like I don't even know. Like it's very, very powerful.
And it's one of the three things that are essential for good youth ministry. I think if I remember the numbers correctly, 5% of young people, if they have no youth ministry, will practice their Catholic faith as an adult. So, right, you take 20 young Catholics, you don't give them any youth ministry, one will practice as an adult. That's what the statistics are telling us these days.
Okay. Jeez.
But yes,
that's scary.
But if you give them good youth ministry and you give them these three things, then that comes up to, I think, like 80 to 90%, like way better. And those three things are like regular meetings with a youth ministry with, peers their age, something that is fun and engaging that they want to go to. The second is adults who will walk with them on their journey that are not their parents. And the third is mountaintop experiences. So these retreats, these conferences, these moments when they can it's like that moment I talked about at the camp, right? Like that moment where you learn and know that Jesus wants a relationship with you, not just with God created the world and he loves the world. Like, no, God loves you.
Yeah, that's huge. I've never heard of those statistics before, but I'm definitely a testament to that. And I can see that, that's crazy.
Yeah. Youth ministry is it's a real passion of mine. And partly because I'm a result of youth ministry. I would not be sitting here today if it weren't for youth ministry.
Yeah.
And also because as a minister of youth ministry, it's so good. These young people are just becoming who they're going to be. And there's I'm just amazed to be able to walk with people during that key formative moment of their lives.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm sure you're a really big role model to a lot of, especially young guys that are going through that. Oh, he's a normal guy. We have a personal relationship with each other.
We just met. Don't call me normal again.
Yeah, I guess so. But a seemingly normal person, and to be able to have a personal relationship where you can talk about life and how's this going, how's this sporting event, whatever, and also the deeper parts of their personal lives where you can help them with that, and they can just look up to you for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're talking about in the confessional with people that may have fallen away or they just haven't gone to confession in 50 years. Are you involved with the Catholics Returning Home program?
I have that is something that is primarily run by a few parishioners here. So they're kind of in charge of it, but I'll come in kind of as support. One of the interesting things about that ministry is the best practice that they found is keep the priests away for the first couple, right? Because for some people, the reason they left might have been because of a bad priest. And I mean, with great reverence, I'm sorry for anyone who's experienced that, right? I'm so sorry that there were priests who didn't love you the way that God called them to, whatever that looked like. And so they say, okay, priests stay away for the first few, and then maybe end of the second session or end of the third session, just stop in, show yourself, say hi, maybe meet a couple of people. And then slowly as time goes on, meet a few more of them. And I taught the session on the Second Vatican Council for this past grouping of it. It's I think a really good opportunity for just re-evangelizing people who, they were Catholic, but maybe they were never actually evangelized. Maybe they just received their sacraments because their parents made them, and then
that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Gosh, wow, that's crazy. Is that just something with this parish, or is it just a kind of more widely known program? It
is a wider program.
Okay.
I don't know of a ton of parishes in the area that do it. This is my first experience with it.
Okay.
Is here at the parish, here at St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception, Worcester. Come on down. It's a long drive, but it's worth it.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what would you say to people that they have kids and they're trying to re-evangelize. They're trying to get them back. They're trying to get them to care, for the kids to care about the faith. What's their step?
That's a great question. So the average age where a young person decides whether or not they will practice the faith as an adult is 13 years old. So that's kind of your key moment, right? Leading up to and at that age, helping them to know that your faith is something that matters to you, right? I talk about this with my couples that I prepare for marriage. I tell them, and this is because I've had too many older people that come up to me and say I brought my kids to church on Sundays and I sent them to Catholic schools and I thought that would be enough to get them to practice the faith, and it's not. None of them practice anymore. And I can just see that their hearts are broken over
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and it breaks my heart, and I'm just sick of it. So I want to get to couples early and say like,
Yeah.
okay, that doesn't work anymore, right? There's a great book, Christendom to Apostolic Mission.
We've taled about that a couple times
Oh
on
my
the
gosh, I
podcast.
love that book so
Yeah.
much. And it really is like, it's this paradigm, right? That it used to be that the culture was going to do some of the heavy lifting for you. And that's just not true anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So I tell couples like, if you don't evangelize your kids, no one else will. Like if you aren't the one to tell kids why a relationship with Jesus matters and to invite Jesus into your home and to make him like a part of your family, no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to tell couples like, I mean, the best day to plant a tree is 100 years ago, and the second best day is today, right? Like if you haven't done this, then start today.
Yeah.
Start evangelizing your kids, and you do that by telling them like from your heart, why does Jesus matter to you? Like why do you value your faith?
Yeah.
And to do so in such a way that is like proposing it to them, right? There are a lot of things that I think parents impose on their children, and faith doesn't work imposed, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
'cause it requires our freedom. It requires our free consent to say like, yes, I want this. Like Jesus is never going to knock down our door. He's going to like knock and be gentle. He never goes where he's not invited because he's a gentleman.
Yeah. It's never good if it's just shoved down your throat.
Yeah.
It's just like you're going to have that rejection of like, I don't want anything to do with that, and
And
run
it's-
away from it.
Especially at 13.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that's where you need some tact and some delicacy to say like, hey, like I just want to tell you why this matters to me and why I find such value in a relationship with Christ.
Yeah. That's really important. I think parents definitely need to hear that. Like you said, today is, if you didn't do it yesterday, like start today,
Yeah.
because, the future is, I don't know what I'm saying, but like to start it today so that the future can be brighter in
Yes.
that way. Yeah, I guess. I don't know where.
When you said 13, I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
not expecting 13. I was expecting like 16, 18, maybe 20.
Yeah.
Something where they're kind of like, they're now going
their
off
brains
onto
more
their own
developed,
thing.
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Well, and how funny is it? Like, what other major life decision do you make at 13? Like,
Yeah,
you're not ready to
actually.
make any major life decisions at 13. Like, I was such a dummy at 13. Like, thank God that the Lord got to me around that age. Like, I mean, oh shoot, entering into 8th grade, like I was pretty much that age. Like that's when I made that decision, and I think that's when a lot of young people make that decision of
Yeah.
whether or not they're going to be involved in their faith.
I would have never imagined that. Yeah, I'm glad that I was introduced to it before 13 as well.
Yeah.
Do you need to clean that up?
It's just water.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
We'll get to it later.
I saw a picture of you shaking the Pope's hand.
Yeah.
Can we
Ooh,
talk
yeah.
about that?
Yeah. I met the Pope. How crazy is that? Yeah. It was the seminary was celebrating the 175th anniversary. And as a part of that, we did a pilgrimage to Rome. There were some generous donors who helped to kind of defray the cost for seminarians because they want seminarians to be able to go to Rome. And the bishop came with us. Actually, both bishops, Bishop Malesic and Bishop Woost, came with us. And they petitioned for an audience with the Pope. And he said yes.
Oh my gosh.
It was one of these things where like, even
It's a once in a lifetime opportunity kind of thing.
like they told us, I kind of caught wind of it early that this might happen. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And then,
You don't want to get your hopes too high.
exactly.
Yeah.
It was like, and then okay, he said yes. It's like okay, and then it's like the week is approaching. Like it's still yes. Like okay, like I'm still thinking to myself, okay, I'm not counting these chickens, right? Like if he says no, then I get to spend a morning leisurely strolling around Rome.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Not a bad morning. And then like the day comes and it's still yes.
Oh my gosh.
We're getting all suited up and getting ready, and we're walking through. There's like the really famous doors that I think like Bernini designed or something, where the Swiss Guard are, and like we're walking up that into the like papal palace. It's like I'm like looking around like, is someone gonna stop us? Like,
Like,
and we get in there and we sit down in the royal room, which is like decorated with frescoes from the Renaissance and everything.
gosh.
And then we just sit and we wait. And we wait. And we wait and we wait. And it's just like this agonizing, like anytime like anything moves or anything shifts, everyone's like, is that him? Like, no, we're just sitting here, just waiting. And then like there's a little bit more activity, and then all of a sudden like the doors open, and like from me to the door, like there's the Pope.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like,
that's like 10 feet away, 15 feet away.
Yeah, like he's right there. Like, and we all stand up and we start clapping for him. And he kind of like walks in. He's got his little cane, and then he sits down. He kind of gives us like one of these like, sit down, like calm down. And he gives us a little address. Or no, first our bishop gave him a brief little address. Then he addressed us in Italian. We had like a little translation of his talk. And then like we had the chance to each go up, and we shook his hand. And like as we're going up, like I knew like I wouldn't actually have much time to like actually talk with him, but I was trying to figure out like what to say to him. And so he understands English pretty well, but his native language is Spanish, and I speak some Spanish. So I'm like, I was practicing in my head what I was going to say to him. And I thanked him for his ministry and for some of the work that he's been doing. And it was one of these moments that like kind of came and went, and it felt kind of like ordination, right? Like it felt like 2 minutes and like an eternity.
Yeah.
And like walking out of there, I danced out, like danced down the stairs. I was so pumped. I'm like, we met the Pope. I shook the Pope's hand. What is this? And so we're walking across Rome, and I'm just like sitting with this incredible moment. And it struck me for the first time how incredible it is that the guarantee of unity within our Catholic faith is not an idea. It's not a perfect unity of creed, right? It's not that like we all believe exactly the same thing about all of theology. Like that's not it. It's not a place. It's not a thing. It's a person. Like there's actually a person that resides at the center of our Catholic faith. Like it speaks to the great reverence that we have as Catholics for the person. That like individuals matter. Like that's what this is about. It's about people, and the one person who is like the guarantee of unity within our faith is the Pope, and I got to shake his hand. Like it just blew my mind, and it gave me a newfound like awe and reverence and like zeal for respect for the Pope, right? Like whether or not I agree with every tiny little iota of theology that he puts forth, like doesn't matter. Like he's my Pope, and I got his back. Like he's my Pope.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I mean, if you were able to meet the Pope, what would you say? Like, I have no clue. That's stressful.
I went back and forth a dozen times. I'm like, what am I going to say? Like, I got like one sentence. Like, do I ask him to pray for my family? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Towards the end of his talk, he said, I promise to pray for your family. So I'm like, okay, we got that. Like,
Checked
we're good.
okay,
check.
We're good.
Like, I'll say something else. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's stressful.
Yeah. And especially the tough part is in Spanish, like doing a formal request requires like weird conjugations that I never use. And so I'm like, I'm not doing any requests. I can't do that. That's too stressful.
Yeah, you'll translate something completely off.
Exactly.
And he's like,
I'm like,
I don't know.
How do you say please pray with ruegue? Like I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like, never mind. We're not doing it.
Well, I don't speak Spanish at all. You speak a little bit, but
very little. Duolingo.
I wouldn't even be able to say anything. Like, that would probably be easier to be like, I know I can't say anything, so I'll just like stand there.
Yeah.
He understands English though.
He does.
Oh, okay.
I have some friends who they did the thing. If you're newlywed and you go to Rome and you wear your wedding dress and like your suit, you can meet the Pope. Like you can shake his hand.
Noted.
What?
Yeah.
My wedding dress is so big though, like that'd be super annoying.
I think that's kind of part of the idea. Is like, hey, like if you're gonna wear a big dress, like that's part of the balancing.
That's just
act.
an excuse to wear it again. I love my wedding dress.
So I think it's supposed to be within a year of getting married, and you're supposed to like bring your marriage
6 months
certificate.
on.
Maybe we can do it.
Clock's ticking.
Oh my gosh.
So she had the opportunity, like with her husband, to meet the Pope.
Wow.
And he's coming down the line, and she's doing this panicked, like, what do I say to him? What do I say to him? And he comes up, and right as he's shaking their hands, she just looks at him and goes, America! Because everyone, when you're in overseas, asks where you're from, right? Like they hear you with your accent, like, oh, where are you from? Oh, we're from America. And so she just jumps the gun and just shouted America at the Pope.
What the heck?
And that's
What
what
was
she
his
said
response?
to the Pope.
Like,
And he just like, yeah, okay.
Figured.
That's it.
Oh my god. Okay, well, we gotta figure that out soon.
That's it.
then.
You
The
got
next
6
6
months. It's not too late.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we would love to go to Rome and like just really anywhere. Like that would be amazing. But
You'd have
there's
to wear
a
the
time
dress on
crunch
the
for that.
plane.
Yeah. That it's too big to fit in a suitcase. Like
You could ship it.
I don't want to do that. It's an expensive dress. I don't want anything to happen.
I have also heard of women doing like buying a smaller white dress and just using that.
Okay, that's probably a lot cheaper and easier. Okay, smart.
And then, hey, excuse to go shopping in Rome.
There you go.
I love shopping.
I hate shopping. I wear the same thing every day. It's the best.
Yeah.
No more clothes shopping.
Yeah, I love shopping.
Did you feel anything like when you shook his hand? Was there like a type of thing?
Beautiful.
Thank you.
It felt a lot more like just shaking the hand of my pastor. Like
Oh, yeah,
like,
that's
just-
cool.
a profoundly like personal like yeah, this is a man, right? Like this isn't a god, right? Like this is a person. This is just a man. And I felt like he was actually interested in
Yeah, like
in
a
me.
relatable person that
exactly.
you can just like,
Honestly, like very similar to the first time I met Bishop Malesic.
wow.
And I swear I'm not just like buttering him up so in case he sees this. Like similar sort of thing. Like it feels like you're just meeting a pastor who's like, oh yeah, like I want to get to know you because I care about you.
Wow. That's so cool.
Was that the same? So was that the pilgrimage you were talking about at the beginning?
No.
So there's two
There's
different,
different
ones.
ones.
Yeah. So the pilgrimage I was talking about at the beginning, when I was in college, I made a pilgrimage to Spain to do a pilgrimage there called El Camino de Santiago de Compostela. So that's the way of St. James. That's the way of St. James of Compostela. And you basically walk across Spain to the place where St. James is buried. It's like he's buried in northwest Spain. And I started my pilgrimage in France.
Oh my gosh.
So I walked 500 miles across Spain over the course of like a month.
Wow. That's crazy. That sounds like so much fun.
Oh my gosh,
Like,
it's the best. It's this like wild experience of like it's meditative and contemplative, but also like adventurous, and you're meeting people from all over the world. And so yeah, I did it at kind of a key moment in my life. I was 20 years old, and I kind of needed something to go from being a boy to being a man. Right? Like cultures around the world throughout history, they've had this like coming of age ritual.
You walk on coals of fire or something.
So like, here's the thing: is like
That was part of it.
as a woman, like you have a moment when you go from being a girl to being a woman. And like it requires some pain and some suffering. And so cultures have intuited that like, okay, this is an important part of maturation, is experiencing pain and suffering to go from youth to adulthood. And so different cultures have had different ways of doing this, but we don't really have that in American culture. Like the closest equivalent would be college, and I don't know, we'll sidebar that. And so, yeah, I'd finished my sophomore year at seminary, and I had heard about this. A friend of mine did the Camini, which is like the last 100 kilometers of it.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of do it in a week. It's like a shortened version of it. And he stayed in like hotels and stuff. I was roughing it in hostels. And I just knew that I needed some sort of adventure. So I did it without like no one else. It was just, I set off
Just
on
you?
my own. And
Wow.
obviously I met people as I went and still in touch with some of them to this day. And so, yeah, like just walking across Spain, it's
it's so simple. Like all you got to do is put one foot in front of the other. There's little yellow flechas, little arrows to guide you along the way. So like anyone can do it, but it takes some mental fortitude to make it.
Yeah. Wow. You didn't walk across fire though?
No, I didn't. Although we were kind of, I don't know, trying to be tough. And so we did the last, I think like 2 kilometers actually into the city barefoot. Just because, I don't know, we wanted some sort of like climactic finale of like, and so, I mean, we were walking on like paved roads. It wasn't actually bad, but we're like, no, we're going barefoot. There was like one little patch of gravel that we had to walk across, like kind of hard, but.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's crazy. That's funny though.
Yeah. I highly recommend, especially for young people who are kind of looking for an adventure, like I highly recommend it. And anytime people say like, ooh, I want to do that, I tell them, well, the first step is to set a date. You need to pick when you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And then you can organize the rest around that. But nothing's going to happen until you set a date.
Yeah, that's a good, like, oh, I want to do this. And you have all these things on your bucket list, but you never actually get to them.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's good. It's good advice.
Board games.
Board games. Yes.
Let's talk about them.
Okay. So I was not into board games for the longest time until like a few of my best friends started like getting real deep into the hobby. And honestly, I just wanted an excuse to hang out with them. And so like, I'm like, yeah, if this is what you guys are into, then sure, I'll start playing games with you guys. But man, we're in deep now. There's about 7 of us in this little group where every Tuesday evening, at least some of us are getting together, which is great because that's my day off. So I'll go home for my day off, spend some time with my family, have dinner with my parents, and then head over to one of these guys' houses, and we're playing. I mean, I'll rattle off some of our favorites like Wingspan, Terraforming Mars, what else? Aquatica, Project Elite, like all these different games. And for someone who doesn't know about the board game hobby, this probably sounds insane, but like they're just really nerdy games, and it's just an excuse for us to hang out and like spend time together without our phones.
Yeah.
And it's just so good.
I'm like, I guess I'm not that into board games then. I'm like, oh, I like Candyland and Sorry. Clue.
Oh.
I'm a big fan of Clue.
Oh, let me tell you, so here's the thing is like, this is good
It's
news
hardcore
for you.
board games.
This is good news for you because if you like those board games, it just gets better.
Fun.
So if you like Clue, I'll give you a recommendation. There's a game called Search for Planet X.
Okay.
And it shares that sort of kind of logical deduction sort of thing where it's like, oh, okay, so if it's not this and there's this thing about like it can't be that, so then it must be this, or maybe it's this. And you can kind of ask questions of it, and it's a lot of fun.
That does sound like it's up my alley.
Yeah, it's pretty like thinky, right? Like you need to think as you're playing the game. It's not just like roll and see what happens.
That's your kind of game. It's just like,
hey,
you're really good at Candyland and like Chutes and Ladders. It's so annoying. It is so annoying because every single time, like, I don't know how. I have actually won a couple times recently, but for the most part, he just like wins the game. No problem. I don't know what it is. And there's zero skill to that game. That's not what he thinks.
No,
Same with like Chutes and Ladders, which is kind of embarrassing that we play that, but that's your favorite game.
Yeah.
Is it Chutes and Ladders or Candyland?
Candyland.
Okay.
There's been a bit of like a board game renaissance over the last couple of years where there are all these like designers that are coming up with like really beautiful games and like different kind of creative ways to different mechanics of how you actually play it. And, it's a lot of fun. It's a world unto itself, as is any hobby, right? Like once you start looking into like anything, right? Hunting is a world unto itself. Racing is all these different things. Like there's a whole world behind that door, and all you gotta do is just open up and peek in, and it's fun.
Along with board games, do you have any other hobbies that you like to do?
My COVID hobby was leather crafting. So like during COVID, I
Okay.
bought this kit for making stuff out of leather. And let me see, do I have my keys on me? Yeah, so I made that.
Oh,
Like,
that's sick.
it's like for
Whoa.
my
Oh my
key
gosh.
fob. It
You got
holds
the
a little
air
air tag
tag?
in there so I don't lose
Wow.
it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
cool.
I'll make like wallets and stuff like that. It's just a fun little like gets me totally focused in on like one thing on just
Yeah,
what's immediately
yeah.
in front of me. So the first time I did it, I think I worked for like 8 hours straight and like didn't even stop to eat or anything. I was just like so focused and I'm like, and then the next step and then the next step. And
Yeah.
it's just fun.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know like what's the process of like leather making stuff.
So I buy the leather already tanned.
Okay.
Like tanning leather is its own.
You don't go like skin a cow.
No,
Okay.
that's wild, and it requires like a lot of chemicals that are like pretty dangerous and put off fumes and stuff. Like I'm not looking to do that.
I have zero clue about any of that. I just go to the store and buy like a belt or something.
So I mean, my part in it is pretty simple. Like I'll kind of cut it to size and stitch it together, and then you got a wallet. Like, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I don't know, something that you could get into. You have a nice wallet though, so you
Yeah,
don't
I don't
need
know.
that.
Maybe up my alley.
One of my favorite parts of it is like every once in a while, like so this, right? This doesn't exist, right? Like it's a holder for a Mazda key fob with an Apple AirTag insert, right?
Yeah.
Like that you can't buy that, but like I wanted it and then I made it and now it exists. Like to go from like an idea to for something that I actually want and can use to it exists and I have it
Yeah.
is so satisfying
And
so
also,
gratifying.
it's like I made this with my hands. It's
Exactly.
like-
And
Yeah.
it's not perfect, but I made it and it's mine. So it doesn't
I
have
like
to be
that a lot.
perfect.
Yeah. So leather making, or what did you call it? Was it leather?
Leather crafting.
Leather crafting.
Yeah.
And during COVID, was there any other like hobbies?
So snowboarding when I can find the time.
Snowboarding.
Done a couple of good snowboarding trips. When I was in seminary, this was fun. We did the world's cheapest ski trip. And so what we did is we got real cheap season passes that kind of through some maneuvering you can get free passes to other resorts.
Okay.
So we had 9 days of skiing in Summit County, Colorado at Copper Mountain, Arapahoe Basin, and Loveland Ski Area, which are three like not premier destinations, but like very, very good. So 9 days of skiing total there. We stayed at the home of a permanent deacon out there, who he was actually out of town the first time we visited. He just said, yeah, shovel the driveway and walk the dog and the place is yours, because we were seminarians. And we like cooked in for ourselves. We drove 20 hours from
Oh my
Cleveland
gosh.
there and then 20 hours from there back. And I think we did the whole trip for like less than $500.
That's crazy. How many people went?
There were 6 of us the first time we did it, and then we did it again a few years later with 8 of us.
Oh my gosh.
And
mean,
it
that's
was
smart,
an
yeah.
absolute blast.
I
So,
can imagine.
yeah. In about a week here, I'm going on a little ski trip with some of the priests from the diocese, and they're not roughing it quite as much. So I'm kind of going along with them. It's a bit more expensive this time, but hey, I have a paycheck now, so it's
That's
okay.
good. I've never been skiing. My brother is actually on a school trip today to New York, but he's only going tubing. Tubing is more up my alley.
Tubing's fun. I grew up sledding. There was always a sledding hill not too far from my home, and
Yeah.
so we'd go out there and like build ramps and stuff. And oh man, we wore that sledding hill out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds like it's so much fun. So like you have a lot of like good relationships with all the priests. Like you go on vacation with them and stuff like that.
Yeah, this will be my first kind of priest vacation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, once again, pretty new to all of this. But yeah, I'm excited for it. We've got so many good priests here in the diocese, the cool thing about this trip, there's 3 of us are kind of younger priests, or 4 of us are younger priests, but then 2 are one's in his 70s, another is in his I think probably mid 50s, I'd guess.
Okay.
And so like all different ages going on this trip together, and it kind of doesn't matter, right? Like because we're all priests of the diocese and we're all just kind of sharing in fraternity, and it's good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Do you have like a little pocket, like travel mass that you bring with you, basically, like a little.
I've seen those on Instagram. Like priests will just take them out. Like someone that was like hunting or something, and he's got camo.
Oh wow.
It wasn't Father Jacob. I know he has a camo vestment, but
Oh nice. No, I have a travel mass kit that I'll use for like we do masses at the nursing homes and stuff like that. So it's like I don't know, it's about yay high. It's all pretty small and compact. But it does the trick, and one of the cool things is just like finding a real nice spot to celebrate mass. Right after ordination, went on a trip with a classmate of mine and then some of our friends who are younger than us in seminary. We went down to Louisville, and we were kind of in the, that region of Kentucky. We did some trips to distilleries and to the Proto Cathedral in Bardstown. And we stayed at an Airbnb that in the back had what was basically an altar set on bourbon barrels. And so we celebrated mass on top of bourbon barrels, which is, I don't know, maybe a bit sacrilegious to some, but to us it was kind of fun.
crazy. You could just celebrate mass like anywhere basically then?
Yeah. So the preference is certainly to celebrate in a church when that's possible. But yeah, like you can kind of celebrate wherever. At the nursing homes, we celebrate on just whatever table they have for us. And so you do your best to kind of sanctify the space and make it feel set apart and distinct. But yeah, I mean, I've celebrated mass on the kitchen table at home, and you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you celebrate mass every day? Is that like a requirement, a priest requirement?
So it used to be a requirement. Back like pre-Vatican II, every priest needed to celebrate mass every day, and they weren't allowed to con-celebrate. And so that's why if you go to some like old churches and old cathedrals, they'll have side altars so that you could have like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 masses going on at the same time. If you have a bunch of priests that all live there and they all need to get their mass in for the day,
got it.
You'll have just a bunch of masses going on at the same time, and maybe it's just the priest and maybe one altar server. These days, there's not the requirement for priests to celebrate mass, and we can celebrate. So there are some priests who make it a practice and a habit of celebrating mass every day. I'm not quite to that point yet. I kind of need to like grow into that a little bit. So maybe someday I'll kind of make that commitment a bit more firmly to make sure I'm celebrating mass every day. But I mean, life is pretty full as a priest, so
I can imagine.
Yeah. What's
a day in the life like?
Oh man, and I'm sure you hear this from every priest. Every day is different.
That is exactly what you hear.
I mean, so I'd say a typical day would be something along the lines of, wake up and kind of get ready for mass, right? We have 7 a.m. mass here, so it's wake up and check the readings, try and come up with something decent to say, celebrate mass, kind of clean up after that, and get a quick bite to eat and a cup of coffee, and then it's into the office, maybe over to we have an elementary school here. St. Mary's Catholic Elementary School is an awesome school. They're doing really good stuff. And so I'll go and greet the kids as they're coming in for school, then back over to the office to answer emails and phone calls, and then maybe out on an anointing call or, a marriage prep session with some young couple. And then getting ready for RCIA or for Parish Pastoral Council. I usually try and duck out of the office, 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock to go and get a workout in. And then a quick dinner. And I mean, most of the time there's some sort of evening event going on. So
yeah,
it's a full life, but then every once in a while there will be a day where there's just nothing going on. It's kind of feast or famine in that way. So I try and take those days for rest and maybe a little bit of recreation, spending time with friends if I can.
Yeah.
To kind of re-energize and then back to it.
Jeez. So. That is full to the brim sometimes.
Yeah. And you know what? It's one of the few graces of COVID is I discovered I hate having nothing to do. Like it's nice every once in a while having a quiet day, right? Yeah. Where I don't need to do a bunch of stuff and I can just rest. But if I have too many of those in a row, I get stir crazy. Like I cannot handle it.
Yeah.
And so when I have a couple of days back to back where it's just so much stuff that I am doing and stuff that needs to get done, I try and remember like, okay, this is good. I'm supposed to be doing a lot. Like this is how God made me.
Yeah.
And
also I try to remember, like, I love the stuff that I'm doing. Like, you know, in the midst of, okay, yeah, I got to answer emails, I got to return phone calls. Like, I don't always love that. But then I'll get called away from that to go for an anointing and like be with someone maybe in their last moments on earth. And, you know, reminding them of, you know, the love that God is calling them to and asking them for their prayers when they make it there. Like, oh, that's something amazing. And then get, you know, called back to kind of ordinary life and then into the confessional where, like, I mean, I'm constantly astonished at the stuff that comes out of my mouth. Like, stuff that I didn't know, that I have no business, you know, being able to give as advice. I'll tell you, there was a confession a while ago where this guy was confessing just all the same stuff that I struggle with. And I was like, as I'm listening to it, I felt like I was just hearing my own confession.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, like, man, what advice am I going to give this guy? And then I gave him advice that I had never heard or considered. Like, it just, yeah.
So that's something you needed to hear as well.
Very much like something that the Lord needed me to hear. It's like, all right, like, get this through your thick skull, Father Dave. Like,
yeah.
This is the thing that you need to hear right now. And glory to God, I think it was some decent advice. So
Well, that's good. That's good.
yeah.
I think the craziest thing that I experienced in a confessional was I started to like going behind the little like blocker thing because it helps me think that I'm confessing more to God than to like the priest. And the priest, like at the end, was like, all right, see you, Dom. And I'm like, what? Not somebody I normally would go to. I think he was just like a visiting priest. And I'm like, how did he know my name?
Did you change your voice or anything?
No, but
Do you get that? Do people like switch their voice up?
Not that I've noticed.
Okay.
Honestly, it is kind of funny to me. Like, I'll hear parishioners where it's like, you have a very distinct voice. I know your voice. And they'll go behind the screen and I'm thinking, like, you're not really, like, if your goal is to hide, like, it's not working. But I think more often it is that sort of devotional, like, pious practice of, no, I'm confessing to Christ. I'm not confessing to the priest.
Yeah.
I'll say I have a preference for going face to face. Just like, there's something humbling about it, of like having to look someone in the eyes and tell them, look what I did.
Yeah.
And there's also something like kind of healing about that, of like, okay, I can tell this person like all of the stuff that I do that I don't like that I do, all the stuff that I try not to do, you know, all of my brokenness, and have them look at me in the eyes and forgive me for it.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of need that. So,
Wow. That's crazy. But that's like also really good coming from a priest too.
yeah. Being a priest has only made me love confession more. Because like, I don't know, I've discovered like sins are just so boring. Like, I am so not interested in the sins that get confessed in the confessional. Like, I'm fascinated by the glory that God is working in people's lives.
Yeah.
And by like the stuff that he's doing. Like, that's way more interesting. That's way cooler. And so I'm so happy to like just dig into that and focus in on that.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is me personally. Like, I always have this, it's so stupid, but I'm like, I have this weird anxiousness about going to confession. And then once I go, it's like, okay, what was I anxious about? Like, that's so dumb. And so I have this like buildup of like, oh no, I could just wait. Like, I don't need to go now.
Yeah.
Like, can you give any advice to someone like me that's like trying to get over that sort of anxiousness of going to confession? But like knowing like everything is fine, like you literally don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah. I think for advice, I'll tell a story. And I'll tell the story because I'm not breaking the seal of a confession, okay? But this is a story of something that happened in the confessional. I don't remember a single sin that this person confessed, but I will never forget this confession. This was at the National Catholic Youth Conference in Indianapolis. And there was this young girl who, you know, I was behind the screen. She comes and she's sitting on the other side and I can hear her voice. And I can just kind of hear as she's confessing, like, just kind of this like indecisive, like kind of wants to give herself to Jesus, but also is kind of holding back. And like, she's kind of right at that decision point.
Yeah.
Like I said, I love youth ministry for this moment because, like, oh yeah, like that's where we want them. It's so good. And so, like, I can just hear her, like, kind of like, I just don't know, like maybe. And I start talking with her and kind of just, trying to pour my heart out for her and just say, like, you know, Jesus wants you. And he wants you, and he wants you. And at one point, she's like, yeah, bro, that's it. Like, bro, she starts calling me bro. I'm like, love that. And so I forget what I was saying. I forget what we were talking about. But I was
threw you off.
But I was just like pouring my heart out for this girl, like trying to get her to understand that Christ wants her and that Christ wants her to give herself to Christ.
Yeah.
And as I'm talking, the curtain comes flying back and she just gives me a big hug.
Oh my God.
And I'm melted. Oh my gosh. It's just like, oh, like even remembering this, like my heart is aching because it was so beautiful. And it was this profound moment of like knowing the heart of the Father.
Yeah.
That like he's there, he's behind the screen, and he will give you as much space as you need. Right? Like he's willing to wait, he's willing to give you that screen to let you be a bit more hidden if that's what you need for now. But like all he wants, he's just waiting for you to throw that screen back. Like he's just waiting for you to pull that aside and give him a big hug. Like that's all that's on his heart. Like your sin is nothing in the mercy of God.
Yeah.
It's so small and it's so trivial. Like he's not intimidated by it. He's not disgusted by it. He's drawn to it. Like if you want to get God, like offer him your sins because he's thirsty for them.
Wow. That's really good to hear. Wow. I don't really have anything to say. I mean, like, I know from experience, like, anytime I go behind the, like, screen, whatever it may be, like, I guess for the opposite, whenever there's not a screen, like, there's just no option for a screen. Because sometimes there's, like, at retreats or something, they'll just have a bunch of priests, like, outside, very, very spread
It's like
out,
in
and
an
it's just, like,
open
two
area.
chairs. And those are, like, the best confessions for me. Because it's, like, you don't have any option but to like go in front of this person. And like it's just always such a really good experience. But then I like freak myself out, like, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think proper preparation can also help. Like I know I'm definitely guilty of this, of like sometimes when I'm going to confession, it's because, well, like I need to go to confession and suddenly here's a priest like, hey, you got a second, and like I'll pull him aside and we'll go to I'll go to confession, and 90% of the time he'll be like, oh, he'll take the stole off and put it on my shoulders, like, and then I'll hear his confession, which is so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
But I'm guilty of not preparing well in those moments, of not actually taking like a solid like 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes to really examine my conscience and really figure out, okay, like, God, where are you in all of this? Like, I think a good examination of conscience shouldn't be about like attacking ourselves or like trying to accuse ourselves. It's more about like when I need to come up with a song to sing at daily mass, I can't just like think of a song. Like it's impossible for me. My brain is broken. And so what I do is I start paging through and I look for like, do I know this song? No. Do I know this song? No. Oh, this song. Yeah, that's a good song. And I think it's the same way with an examination of conscience. It's this big long list that can identify that thing that we know about that we can't quite think up off the top of our heads.
Yeah, definitely. I know that is very, very helpful when, like, especially at retreats, they'll have like pieces of paper that you can, go and reflect, and they give you time, and there's like soft music playing, and like you can really sit in your thoughts and be like, okay, now I know I'm not forgetting anything. And like even things that I didn't even realize, like being able to check those off and have those like on your like heart ready to confess. Yeah.
And it helps you to go in there like with the approach of just like attacking your sin, right? Like some of the best confessees that I know, like people who confess, they come into the confessional with this just like this zeal for going after their sins with like, it's not about shame. It's not about like self-hatred. It's just like, hey, I hate these sins, so we're going to destroy them together.
and they come and be like, I do this and I do this, and I'm often angry at my family, and I just like rattling them off with this just like passionate attack. And it's so cool to see. There's one guy in particular where he does this, and I told him after like the second time that I heard his confession, I'm like, man, you're really good at this. And he just kind of chuckled.
I don't know what I would think of that.
Like, and he took it really well. It's just
That's
like,
good.
I'm like, you're so good at this. Like, I admire that. I want to be as good at confessing my sins as you are. Because he was just so after it, like a dog after a bone.
How could you, like, I don't know, like, I guess some people are really, really ashamed of the sins that they're like wanting to confess, and they kind of like hold back and like maybe try and like rephrase whatever the sin may be. How can you, like, what advice would you give to someone that like is kind of facing those things?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I think that from a priest's perspective, when I hear someone trying to like pretty up their sins, it feels wrong. Like it feels like I'm a doctor and you're trying to hide your symptoms from me.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not why we're like, come on, you know why we're here. Like, we're here to go after these sins. So like, out with it. And it's not judgment, right? Like, it's not like when people do that, I'm like, oh, shame on you. It's like, no, it's just like, come on, like, the Lord has more for you here that you're just passing up on.
Yeah.
So like, it definitely takes courage to make a good confession. But like, hopefully, we've had that moment of like a really good confession where we overcome that courage and you float out of the confessional, right? Like, nothing can bring you down in that moment. You're flying on air. So yeah, just like go after it with the courage of like someone who's sick and is going to the doctor. Like,
that's a really good way of thinking about it, for sure. Yeah, I went to like a retreat one time, and they said, like, get the worst sin out of the way first. Like, don't like save it for the end. Like, just put it first and then like go down the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like say it the way that it is. Like, don't try and sugarcoat it or anything. Like, just say it for what it is.
Yeah.
And like, once that's done and over with, it's like, okay, that was the hardest one. Like, it's only easier from now.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And I still do that myself. Like, I lead with like the one that I don't want to say. It's
the prayer sandwich of like, oh, I said a lie, and then this is like the worst one. And then you're like, and I also like, I don't know.
And I also fought with my brother.
Yes.
It's like, okay, let's that middle one. We need to talk about that one. I will say this, and this is something I bring up often in the confessional, is that Jesus is most tender and most patient with those who struggle with sexual sin. Like, you read the Gospels, and he is just so patient and so gentle with them. And I think that's so important for us to remember whenever we struggle with sexual sin. To know that like this place in our heart that is so often the place of greatest shame is the place where the Lord just wants to bring greatest honor and reverence. Yeah. It's so important. I pray, not infrequently. One of my favorite passages is the woman caught in adultery. And I'll encourage people, like, put yourself there, right? Like, in her place, just clutching onto any shred of dignity that you can find, and like, take a moment to hear the accusations, to hear those voices that are trying to shout you down. Look down at that ground and notice how Jesus lowers himself to write a message to you. Like, what is he saying to you? Because I'm convinced that the reason we don't know what he wrote on the ground is because he wrote a message to each of us. Like, what did he write to you? And he stands back up, he says something to the Pharisees, and he kneels back down and he writes another message to you. Like, what are those messages that he has to say to you?
Wow. That is really, really powerful. I know that's something that, like, I can just look back at my, like, childhood of, like, wanting to confess stuff like that, but being like, I don't want to say that to anybody. Yeah. And then when I finally did, it was just like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Like, yeah. And I'm finally free, instead of like holding it in as like something that's really shameful and like nobody can know about that. Like nobody wants to hear about that or anything like that. And just being able to say the words out loud to someone and like finally give it over to God is just very, very powerful and freeing.
Yeah. I was preparing the kids for confessions at the school a couple of months ago for Advent. And this one little girl in 4th grade, she's so stinking cute. She raises her, and they're all asking questions. She raises her hand. She goes, what if there's something that you should confess that you're kind of scared to confess, that you don't want to tell the priest? And I'm like, that's a really good question. Like, you should still tell the priest, and I'll tell you what, you'll feel a lot better after you do. And so she came in, no, do not remember what it was. It was nothing big. And then as she's walking out of the church, I'm like waving goodbye to all the kids. And she looks up at me, she goes, you were right, Father David. I feel a lot better.
That's like, so cute.
Oh, so cute.
I don't know if you want to say this because this is more of like your confession thing, but when you had confessed to the priest.
Oh, yeah. So in high school, people, I don't even know how this comes up, but they like talk about confession. And I went to a Catholic high school, and they would not confess certain things. And it had to go along the lines of sexual stuff, whether it was porn, masturbation, sexual sin. And I'm just like, it would come up of like, what do you confess in there? You know, like kind of like feeling out how'd your confession go, I guess. Which it could be weird, but we were friends, so it was like it didn't really matter. And I wasn't trying to hide anything from them. And it's like, yeah, I confessed everything. And they're like, everything? Like, you even went there?
Yeah.
I was like, do you not? like that's the one time I feel like you should be.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of funny, and maybe like a way of evangelizing that is just like, yeah, like even that one was said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I almost feel like we shouldn't be like trying to pretty it up. We should be like trying to scandalize the priest. Like get in there and like try and make it sound as bad as it is, right?
Yeah.
Like just try and convince the priest that you're a terrible sinner, and like that will evoke from him the greatest compassion and mercy. At least like that's my experience, right? Like when people come in and they're just like, oh, like they feel the weight of their sin. And they're like, I just want freedom from this. I'm like, yeah, baby. Like we're going to get you some freedom from that sin. It's so good. It feels right. Like when people are truly penitent for their sins, like it's beautiful. Like I look at that and I'm like, oh, like it's perfect. It's so good.
There was also, that's not the one that I was getting at actually, but
really?
Like when the priest was like, don't say it like this way, like just say the guy thing.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what
that has
I want
to go
you to tell
along
it
with
because
that.
you know I'm gonna butcher your story.
It was people like going in there being awkward about the situation, and so I don't know if I even want to touch on that one.
Yeah, I'll say this, and this might be what what was going on there, is there is room for some like pastoral like space for saying like, hey, if you're not in a place yet where you can say out loud like the sin as it is, like, okay, we're still going to give you a chance to receive the mercy that you're ready to receive. Like I know of,
I thought that they didn't count if you didn't say it though.
So what the priest needs to have some knowledge of the number, kind, and circumstance of your sin.
Okay.
And so there are some priests, and this is, I think, a little bit controversial. There are some priests who would do something along the lines of, have you committed this sin? Have you committed this sin? Have you committed this sin? And they'll have like, 15, maybe 20 different common sins that they'll rattle through. And all you need to do is say yes or no. This would also be relevant for like someone who is dumb or mute, who cannot speak, right? Like, hold on to my hand, squeeze my hand if you've committed these sins. Like, okay.
I didn't even know that you could do that. Like, I didn't even think of that. Like somebody that can't actually speak, they can give a confession too.
Yeah.
Or receive confession.
Yeah. And so you make
pastoral allotments for the situation as it is. Now, I certainly think that it is better to, just come out and say it. But just imploring people, saying like, be courageous, be courageous, be courageous. If they're totally mired in sin and like they're cut off from the grace of God, like that might not be possible for them where they are right now.
Yeah.
And so you make some allotments to say, okay, we want you to get here, but we see that you're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So for now, like, let's try and lift some of this burden off of you.
So is it like a partial like reconciliation
No,
at that point?
it's still a full reconciliation,
Okay.
but I think you're leaving some grace on the table, so to
Okay,
speak.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Wow.
I think reflecting back onto that, the reason that I don't want to really talk about it is that I think I'm viewing it differently now. Is that, like you're saying, is that there's to the people that he was telling that to, I think they're having so much shame and they're bringing shame and their like identity is attached with the shame and with the sin that he's just like, say it this way so that it's not so shameful or hurtful to you to get them to the next step.
Yeah.
Whereas
that
with
makes
me,
sense.
I'd just go in there and be like, dude, this is how it is.
Yeah.
There will be some people that will say something to the effect of, I sinned against the 6th commandment. And so I'll usually follow that up with others or with yourself. And then they'll say with myself or with others. And it's like, okay, that's enough clarity for me of like the kind of sin that you committed and a little bit of the circumstance. And, often, yes, often. Okay. Like that is enough information. Like, and this gets down to like, you don't need, when you're confessing, you don't need to include every tiny little detail, right? Like you don't need to go into grotesque detail. You just need to confess what you did. So there's certainly room for some pastoral allotment. But I think going into a little bit more detail than you're comfortable with is better than papering it over and making it sound prettied up.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense for sure. Wow.
Are there any questions that we haven't asked you that you think we should be asking you?
I don't know. Can I ask you some questions?
Sure.
Okay. So you have your Catholic media company, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that for so many years Christian media has been so bad?
That was good because they haven't had us. Just kidding.
I don't.
Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I know what
like,
you're talking about.
Like for so many years, like bad Christian movies and like, is it just a lack of funding? Is it like a lack of emphasis on that as like a valuable and important thing?
I would say it's a mixture of like a lot of those things combined of like now that equipment and stuff and like phones, like everybody has a phone now, that's normal. Like equipment is a lot more available to people. And like you can learn stuff that you would have to go to school for like on YouTube. So like you can figure it out by yourself now rather than just like that's only in Hollywood that you can access that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And also funding. Like, movies are like, I don't know what the average budget for a good quality movie is.
It's
Multi-millions of dollars. Christian organizations just don't get that. And especially because it's like independent from like the big organizations. Same thing with like music and art, like basically everything, you know what I mean? I don't know what you have to add.
Music seems like it should be different though, right? Like anyone can create music, and especially, with kind of streaming, anyone can post it.
Yeah. Definitely nowadays is a lot better. Like when I was getting into Christian music, the first stuff that comes up, I'm like, I don't know about this. It's kind of rough. But then like you get into the more like independent artists and it's like, wow, this is really good. It just takes a lot more deeper to like look into it rather than just you automatically find something that you love and is actually good quality.
It seems like we're kind of turning a corner here.
Yes, I would say so, for sure.
I think with Angel Studios and a couple different organizations, they're tapping into that and they see that there's value. They see that the different messages and morals and values that are in certain media don't align with the Christian values, so they're tapping into the people that want to give that to either themselves, like as adults, or to their kids, or both. And like you were saying, the entry to the media is lower, but then also I think people are starting to see more value in it.
Yeah.
Everybody's going digital. They're starting. It's not just like we need some sort of functional website just for somebody to click and see what mass times are.
Yeah.
It's more of a meet people where they are, and people are on their phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, for years I was kind of in the camp of saying like, just like everybody got off your phones. Like these things are poisoning your brains, and I do still kind of think that. But like my thought was also like, don't go too far into like content creation. Like don't go too far into like trying to live in that world, because like the algorithms are just gonna poison your brain anyways. And I'm kind of turning the corner on that, particularly because like just last week I got a phone call from a student at the College of Worcester. I'm the chaplain of the College of Worcester here in town, and she said, "Hey, I'm interested in your RICA program, RCIA." And I'm like, okay. So I call her back and we start talking. I'm like, yeah, like, how did you become interested in this? And she goes, well, it started on TikTok, of course. And I just about dropped the phone.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
it started on TikTok? And so, yeah, she started, like, she came across some Catholic content creators on TikTok. And then, you know, kind of looked up our website and jumped on Formed and has been watching some of the content on Formed, and you know has been watching The Chosen and stuff like that. It's like, okay, like for her, like her entry into this was like a digital entry, which is very foreign to my experience, but also like, hey, if that's what gets you in the door, like glory to God.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's amazing though.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, meeting people where they are is really important, because if that stuff wasn't there, like she wouldn't know about, you know, maybe like the Catholic Church, or have a completely different view of it than she does now, of like wanting to grow her faith and possibly become Catholic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's an entry point and an enrichment point. So
Yeah.
it can't
I
give
like
you
that.
everything that the Catholic faith can give you. Like you
no,
need to go to
not at
mass,
all.
you need to receive the Eucharist and the sacraments, but it's the entry for a lot of people. And then it's also that enrichment. Like, oh, I get to see this little TikTok video of this one saint that I didn't really know anything about, and now I kind of a little bit interested, so I'm gonna go watch a deeper video on Formed about that saint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think especially like even in the last couple of years, there's like a lot of really good content being put out as far as like, you know, Bible in a year or Catechism in a year, or I mean, The Chosen is pretty excellent stuff. I just found out, I visited someone in jail, and she was saying that she binged the entire 3 seasons of The Chosen in jail because it's like available to them on their tablets that they have.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, that's a pretty good way to spend your time in jail. Yeah, like there's suddenly like better content, which is really cool to see that we're not stuck in the days of, you know, the 2005 Christian movies, growing up on like Fireproof and stuff like that.
I don't even know what that one
Yeah.
is.
Don't bother.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, there's a couple good Christian movies that we watched recently. I think one was A Case for Christ.
Okay.
It's about this like,
I think we have the book of that up here.
yeah.
Eh.
But I guess for like the audience that may not know what it is, it was about this oh, you do have it.
There we go.
This like atheist guy, his wife like was, something happened to their daughter. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but in the movie, like his daughter like choked on something, and the one woman that like was a nurse, she was a Christian, she like saved her, and his wife was like, went to the nurse and was like, thank you so much, and eventually they got talking about their faith, and she started going to church with her, and the husband was like, you're cheating on me with this Jesus guy, and so he was trying to prove that Christianity was it specifically Catholicism?
No, it was Christianity.
Christianity
Yeah, I think it was
was
Christianity.
like
Yeah.
not correct. And when he was doing deeper research, he's like, it's all true.
Yeah,
And
kind of
so-
doing that like legal analysis
Yeah.
almost.
And it was just a really, really good movie.
Yeah.
In general, like not even just from a Christian standpoint, like it was just a good movie.
Yeah.
So,
Our our DRE has said a couple of times, I've heard of a lot of people reading their way into the Catholic faith. I've never heard of anyone reading their way out of the Catholic faith, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Like there is so much truth here that if you keep looking for truth, you're going to find it here. Mm-hmm. And if you are here and you have questions and stuff is confusing to you and doesn't make sense, if you read enough, it'll make sense.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Wow. Also, like Sound of Freedom was just really good.
Sound of Freedom was good. I kind of hated watching it. Like my calves were sore the next day because I was like bouncing my foot through the whole movie, just like anxious and stressed out. But it was very good.
Yeah. What other movies are coming? They have Cabrini now, and like all of these other ones. One that I want to see is The Shift.
The Shift.
It's like a dystopian modern interpretation of the Book of Job. Apparently, so it looks really, really cool. And what was another one?
After Death.
After Death. It was like these
Near death.
near death experiences from people that have like actually like died and then gone to heaven or hell, and like they came back to life and like shared their stories.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds really cool.
Have you ever seen the film Calvary?
No.
So it's a beautiful film. It's not like explicitly Catholic or explicitly Christian, but it's got like, it's just really good and kind of follows a bit of a Christian story. It follows this priest who, at opening scene, he's in the confessional, and there's a man on the other side of the screen who tells him that when he was a child, he was molested by a priest. And so because of that, a good priest needs to die. So he tells him, in a week's time, I'm going to kill you.
Oh my gosh.
And it follows this priest in his during this week, like what he does. And it's a gorgeous film, like really well made and beautiful, and just follows this really interesting priest character. And it's one of my favorite depictions of a priest in film. It's pretty good.
I will have to watch that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's intense. As you can tell, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
But it's very good.
Yeah, the one movie that came out recently, I don't know if you've seen the new Padre Pio movie.
I have not. Was that the one with Shia LaBeouf?
Yeah, I wasn't personally a fan of it.
It seems like it kind of flopped.
Yeah, but one thing that was like really cool is that like because of like Shia LaBeouf doing, is it called method acting? I think
Yeah.
he like stayed with these monks or wherever, and like he became Catholic because of it, and that's really amazing. And that wouldn't have happened if he didn't do that film. I think he's becoming a deacon now or something.
He's considering it.
Yeah, but
he
was,
just became Catholic
Yeah.
like a month ago.
which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and apparently I also heard, speaking of celebrity conversions, Jordan Peterson's wife is becoming Catholic this Easter.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Which I think means Jordan Peterson is going to follow behind in like a year or two. And I feel so sorry for whatever poor priest needs to prepare him, because like he's going to have so many intense questions that I would not be ready for. So
Yeah.
prayers for that priest. Better him than me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but I guess media is just so much better today, and it's just going to keep getting better.
That's the hope.
Like, hopefully, yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to see. I'm trying to think if I have any other questions for you. Oh, you've been married for 6 months. How's that?
It's great.
Yeah, it's great.
I love marriage. Way better than dating and engagement.
What has surprised you most about being married?
Jeez. Usually we're the ones asking the questions. So.
Turning the tables.
What surprised me about being married? I don't know. I guess people's reaction to like us like we got engaged after 6 months.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And like we just keep deepening our faith, but like we've gotten a lot of pushback and like weird reactions for like following what the church says and like doing things the good Catholic way, I guess. But I guess the thing that I just keep thinking of is like Jesus was perfect and people hated him. So like if you're on that path, people are going to hate you for it. So not that people are necessarily hating us, but there's like a
And
weird...
you're not saying that you're perfect either. Let's get that out.
I can say that. Yeah, I'm not perfect. Neither are you. So.
I know. Just be clear.
But yeah, I guess like weird pushback from like doing things the like Catholic way. But that's just making me want to continue on that because you know you're doing the right thing.
You got that rebel streak where it's like when people tell you not to do something, it makes you want to do it more.
Yeah,
I got that too.
I think the only reason that's weird though is because it's from people that you're like, you should be excited that I'm doing it that way. Like it's from a Catholic, but then when you're like, no, I'm really like taking it seriously, especially in the like NFP world where a lot of people want to just like skirt past that part and just be like, yeah, I'm totally open to life, but I'm not going to do that thing. Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah.
NFP is like, I've just become more and more convinced it's one of the greatest treasures that the church has. Like it is so good. And when I'm pitching it to couples, I'll tell them this way, like you have more sex more often and more satisfaction from it and like a 5% divorce rate. Like those two things alone, right? Like that takes 10 seconds to pitch that. Those two things alone should at least get you to the point of like, all right, I'm listening. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not convinced yet, but I'm listening and I'll hear you out. Like I'll take the class. I'll learn about this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's hard. It takes sacrifice, but man, on the other side of that, like you got a lot of benefit.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, we learned about NFP by reading The Good News About Sex and Marriage by Christopher West.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And it was just like kind of thrown in there. And then we were like, oh, wow, like this is really interesting. So we just kept learning and researching about it. And then it came to like pre-Cana when the couple that gave like the NFP talk, we were like, they did not pitch that well. Like it is so much better than that. And like, I don't know. More people should learn about it. Like even definitely before you like are engaged. Like that shouldn't be the first time you hear about NFP, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
I did a whole series with the youth at my home parish on it. Like, it was like a summer series, and I was like reading a bunch of books about it. I'm like, this is what I want to talk about. So here's what we're talking about. And it was, I think we did like 3 or 4 weeks, like maybe 5 weeks on NFP and birth control. And I mean, the minefield that is birth control of like problematic, like not just morally, like medically,
yes,
very problematic. I was during my prep for this, I was listening to a bunch of podcasts on it, and it was like half Catholics, half crunchy granola hippies.
Yeah.
They're like, they don't like the idea of just putting a bunch of like synthetic hormones in their bodies that like actually change a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a fascinating scholar, Dr. Sarah Hill. Go and listen to her TED Talk like right now. It's so good. She talks about basically how chemical hormonal birth control changes the brains of the people who use it and changes like the way they perceive the world.
Yeah.
Okay, this terrifies me and is also very depressing. Chemical birth control, hormonal birth control, stops the stress response of your brain. What's the stress hormone? Help me out.
it's not cortisol.
It is.
It is
yes,
cortisol.
good job.
Okay.
So hormonal birth control shuts down the cortisol response of your brain, which does not mean that you don't get stressed. It means that your brain does not release the hormone that it's supposed to release to help you deal with stress and learn from stress.
Sense. Yeah.
And so like, because of this, like young women are walking around anxious out of their minds, not knowing why, and unable to deal with the stresses of life because their brains aren't doing the thing that they're chemically supposed to do to help them deal with stress and learn from stressful situations. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And we're just sweeping it under the rug saying like, no, it's the pill. It's a lifestyle drug. It's to treat acne. It's to
Yeah.
like it's
Which is
wild.
crazy to me. Like, I've never been on birth control, but I know, like, when I was in middle school and, like, early high school, there would be girls that are like, oh, yeah, I'm going on the pill, like, to get rid of my acne. Like, you go to your doctor, you're like, oh, I have really bad period cramps, or, like, I have acne. They're like, here's a pill, like, it'll fix that.
Yeah. Imagine
Like-
any other field of medicine
Yeah.
like acting this way, like a
Just
pulmonologist, right? Like your lungs. Like, yeah, we have the pill for your lungs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if there's a problem with your lungs, you take the pill. What do you mean the pill?
pill,
Like
yeah.
there are so many things that can go wrong with your lungs.
Yeah.
Like why would there just be one treatment to treat your lungs? Like no, there should be multiple courses of medicine, not
Yeah.
just the pill. And yet for, women's health, it just seems like it's ubiquitous. And there are a few clinics. I think we have 2 in the Diocese of Cleveland. There's Veranova, and then there's one in Wadsworth that I should know the name of. Anyways,
I've heard of Veranova, and, like, I want to go there so bad.
it's so good.
Yeah.
Like they're actually doing real women's health care and like treating
The root symptom, like root cause, instead
Exactly.
of just treating the symptoms.
not just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
When I was in seminary, I went out to Omaha for the summer for a program called IPF, the Institute for Priestly Formation. And while I was out there, I toured the St. Paul VI Institute, which is where the Creighton method of birth control,
Yeah.
of NFP, was developed. Dr. Hilgers, and he does a lot with, like, they call it NAPRO technology, natural reproductive technology. It was fascinating, just the way that they get into, like, women's health, and they love women's health. He developed a new strategy for endometriosis surgery. Like, this is like cutting edge scientific stuff that they're doing at this tiny little Catholic clinic because no one else is doing it. Like, women's healthcare is this, it's like a vacuum right now. And like, good Catholic healthcare practitioners are the only ones stepping in to fill that void. And I just think it's gonna boil over, and all of a sudden, like, people are gonna realize, like, oh, hang on, and turn and look and see, oh, there's the Catholic Church filling in this gap. And
Yeah.
we won't get credit for it, but it'll still be good.
Yeah.
It'll still be so good.
Yeah, just like another thing with, I don't know a whole lot about birth control and all that stuff because I've never been on it, but I know that it, like, changes the hormones so much that, like, when you're like dating and stuff like that, the men that you're attracted to are completely different than when you're off the pill.
Yeah.
And then somebody put it like, oh yeah, I wouldn't be looking for a life partner when I'm on drugs.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they put it, and that's very true.
Yeah.
Because when they get off of it, like, they're like, I'm not attracted to this person at all. Like, it's completely different.
Yeah. From my research, I found that I don't think that's always the case, but it's the case for a significant number of people. That, like, and the theory that I've heard is fascinating. So it's synthetic progesterone is, the hormone that you're actually on. And it simulates pregnancy for years on end. You take the off week pills to, simulate a period, basically. But the main thing is the synthetic progesterone. That's what allows you to actually, your body won't release any more eggs because it thinks you're already pregnant. When you're pregnant, like, evolutionarily, you are programmed to want to be around people who are genetically similar to you, because those are people who, it's your brothers and your father and your family members who are going to keep you safe and make sure that you're safe during your pregnancy. When you are not pregnant, the genetic preference turns towards people that are genetically dissimilar from you, because there is a evolutionary benefit to bringing 2 diverse sets of chromosomes, because you get the benefits from both. And so, like, that seems to be the operating kind of theory of, like, why this happens. Here's a fascinating like, possible result of this is that there are people that are getting married to people that are genetically similar to them. And that leads to all sorts of, like, the common genetic disorders that are becoming more common. And more common without people really having a good reason of why.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That's crazy.
This is all stuff that's like, it has not been proven. So like, please don't, I'm not an authority on it. This is just stuff that I've heard about on podcasts and read about in articles. But it makes sense to me, and I think it's an interesting idea.
Makes sense to me too, and I'm not by any means like educated on that, but that just
So I'm excited for like what Catholic healthcare is going to be able to do into the future, you know, with women's health and with just like ethical healthcare, as the world turns more and more towards like, you know, just trying to make a quick profit on healthcare, with a healthcare system that is baffling and confusing. Like I think the Catholic healthcare practitioners are really going to be the ones to step up and do some pretty amazing work.
Definitely. Wow.
Yeah. What else has surprised you about marriage?
Are you gonna say something?
I am. I'm thinking.
Okay.
Surprise me is like a big word. I just like sleeping in the same bed. That's nice.
Stuff that like,
and little habits
things
that I see you do that I wouldn't know otherwise is very cool. I'm thinking about one particularly, but it's probably...
Don't say anything embarrassing, because I can say something embarrassing. I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna do that to you.
So yeah, I guess like the little habits that you pick up that you wouldn't be able to pick up if you weren't living with the person.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One of the things I love reminding couples of as they're preparing for marriage is like that your love story, like it matters because it's a part of the love story. That like the love that you share as a married couple is the best image that the church has for the love that God has for his church. So that like me as a priest, like when I'm trying to explain to people like what does God's love look like, I should be able to like turn and say it looks like that. Like that is the best image that we have for God's love for his church is like Prince Charming coming to save the princess. It's why we keep telling the story over and over again, and it's why we love all love stories. It's why all of our stories are love stories, because we love that story and we want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, just little things like that. That's, you know, you wouldn't understand or appreciate about that other person. Like little things like waking up next to you, or like when I won't wake up and you make me breakfast in bed to get me out of bed.
Here's some waffles.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, my girlfriends are just like, oh, that's so cute. And it is really cute.
Well, good.
That's good.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Do you have an Instagram or somewhere people can find you? Or
I do technically still have an Instagram. I never post. I haven't posted since like 2016, and I stand by that decision. Social media is not my world to exist in. So if you want to come and follow me, come down to Worcester. And I think sometimes we do live stream our masses, so sometimes my homilies will be posted there. So yeah, but otherwise, come down to see me in person.
And what was the full name of the church again for that?
St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception Parish in Worcester, Ohio.
Awesome.
Got it.
It's a great place to be.
Heck yeah.